next speaker, in some ways, doesn't need an introduction, but I will give her one. In 2012, she went up against the biggest Democrat in Washington State, Frank Chop, garnered 20,000 votes. We celebrated in Socialist Alternative like we had just won, and in some ways we did win, because she ran a campaign taking no corporate money, a grassroots campaign that came out of the Occupy Wall Street movement in Seattle, Washington. So in 2013, we decided, you know what, let's run again. But this time, we'll run for city council. We ran against a 16-year incumbent Democrat who was once a liberal, but became a hardcore right-wing Democrat. We defeated him. And then in 2013, based off the low-wage workers' struggle and strikes that took place in New York City, in 6 months in office, she helped to win the first $15 minimum wage in a major city. And one of my favorite things to say, in 2015, was re-elected city council in the face of a Democratic and Republican Party onslaught against the campaign, which was one of the most powerful campaigns that I've ever been a part of in my political life. It is my honor to introduce to you the city councilor from Seattle, Washington. They call it the Emerald City, and the shining emerald in the leftist movement today, Kshama Sawant.
Thank you, Ajay, for that warm introduction. Sisters and brothers, Donald Trump is now Predator-in-Chief and head of one of the most dangerous and right-wing administrations in US history. In his inauguration speech, Trump said that his government will follow the righteous path, that it will be a government for the people, that the forgotten men and women will be forgotten no more, that he will create good jobs for all. And he said great schools. But of course, as we know, Trump is a disgusting multi-billionaire liar and con man. He has built his administration on the worst muck of the billionaire class, right-wing bigotry, and corporate elite. And there is absolutely no mandate for Trump's hateful, bigoted, misogynist agenda. He is arriving at the White House with the lowest approval rating before inauguration, and those approval numbers are plummeting by the hour. But opinion polls alone will not be sufficient to stop him. Trump and the billionaire class understand one thing only: power. And that is why our task this weekend and going forward has to be to build social power from below to counter the billionaires.
Yeah.
But to answer the wide range of vicious attacks that will be coming at us from Trump's administration will require building a determined fighting movement, a movement that seeks to mobilize millions from below into collective struggle, building grassroots democratic structures and our own independent organizations. Socialist Alternative has shown an example of this. The day after elections, when many were paralyzed with despair, we called for protest rallies in many cities around the country, including Seattle, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and we mobilized 50,000 people onto the streets. Woo. Yesterday, in a historic day of protests, again, Socialist Alternative organized really militant rallies, including in Seattle, where 5,000 people showed up in the evening. But not just that, Socialist Alternative has also launched socialist students in high school and college campuses. And through socialist students in Seattle, we had students, courageous students, walking out from 16 middle and high school and college campuses. But going forward, sisters and brothers, merely protest will not be enough. We are going to be required to organize mass, non-violent civil disobedience. Marches of tens of thousands of people can shut down highways and find other ways to shut down business as usual. We need mass, peaceful, direct actions to block efforts to deport our immigrant brothers and sisters. To inspire huge numbers into action, we need fighting demands that point to an alternative vision of society, a vision that puts people and the environment above the profit-driven agenda of big business. Of course, we will need to begin by mobilizing around defeating the litany of attacks that will come from Trump and the Republicans, from defending the gains that were won through the Affordable Care Act to defending public schools. But this defense needs to be linked to putting forward audacious demands that can inspire with a promise of a dramatic improvement in people's lives, especially something for the millennial generation. We are going to have to fight for Medicare for all. $15 an hour for all workers in America. Full funding for public schools and free higher education by taxing Wall Street greed. And because Black Lives Matter, putting an end to police brutality and the racist mass incarceration state. We all heard some of this in the election year last year. Bernie's bold campaign, a program around these demands inspired enthusiasm from millions, while Hillary's timid, corporate-friendly proposals of tinkering around the edges failed to mobilize them. And this weekend needs to be our starting point. Let's make March 8th, which is International Women's Day, a day of defiance against Trump and misogyny and sexism. Let's make it a day of protest to defend Planned Parenthood and against all forms of sexual violence. May 1st is International Workers' Day and a day for immigrant rights protests. Our target this May 1st should be to bring millions onto the streets in a truly massive wave of demonstrations for immigrant rights and against racism, and we have to be there, all races, all national origins, shoulder to shoulder, because an injury to one is an injury to all. And to build these struggles successfully, we will need the broadest possible unity in action of all forces that are prepared to seriously fight against Trump and his billionaires. This will mean unions, immigrants' rights organizations, women's rights organizations, civil rights, LGBTQ, environmental rights organizations, all activists, Sanders supporters, progressive Democrats, and socialists and Greens coming together around these concrete demands. But, sisters and brothers, there is no avoiding that there are major political differences of strategy and social interests in this movement. In my view, and in the view of Socialist Alternative, my organization, our movement needs to base itself on the needs of the struggle against Trump and the billionaire class. We cannot let it be restricted by the limits of what the corporate leadership of the Democratic Party will allow. We cannot make a false equivalence between the Democrats and Republicans. There are differences. At the same time, the Democrats in Congress will now be put to the test in terms of their willingness to stand firm against Trump. Because let's remember, when Obama became president in 2009, the Democrats had 60 seats in the Senate and a large majority in the House, and yet the Republicans succeeded in relentlessly fighting Obama, blocking much of his agenda. The question now is, will the Democratic Party politicians, will the congressional Democrats be willing to similarly relentlessly obstruct Trump's agenda, especially with the Republicans having only a razor-slim majority of 52 seats in the Senate? For example, concretely speaking, Trump has promised that he will nominate an ideologue, a zealot for the Supreme Court justice, somebody who will go after abortion rights. But he will not be able to do that if congressional Democrats stand firm and filibuster him.
That's right.
Will they? I think we have to recognize that there's an honest debate about what the role of the Democratic Party will be in the coming months. Unfortunately, in our view, recent experience does not inspire confidence in the Democratic Party, especially in the pro-capitalist politicians who dominate the party. I commend the stance of those congressional Democrats who refused to attend Trump's swearing-in yesterday. But we also need to recognize that the majority of their Democratic colleagues refused to do so, instead shamefully attending. The most outrageous recently was what Tim mentioned, which is the recent decision by 13 Democrats to join Republicans in siding with Big Pharma against ordinary working people. 2 of those 13 Democrats are the Democratic senators from my state, Washington State, Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell.
Boo. Boo.
As a socialist, I do not think that the Democratic Party is offering the kind of combative, working class, or movement-based leadership that will be necessary, that will be critical to confront a ruthless foe like Trump. That is why I do not agree with the point that was made that we need all kinds of tactics. We need people to work outside the Democratic Party, and we need people working inside the Democratic Party. I hope that Brian, my colleague from the Movement for the 99%, can go more into detail in that. I will say that the 99%, as Jill said, need to build an alternative to the right-wing Republicans and Wall Street Democrats.
Yes.
We need our own political party. We need a new political party that rejects all corporate donations and instead bases itself on the funding and active support of working people and progressive organizations, a party that runs anti-corporate candidates all over the US. But we also have to understand that maybe there may be overwhelming agreement in this room, perhaps, I'm not sure, but we may have agreement that the Democratic Party does not represent us, we need a new party. But we have to remember, we are not going to be successful in building an alternative to the Democrats and Republicans unless we recognize that most of the mass of working people out there, most of the 500,000 people who march today, do not necessarily see it that way. There are many people who are angry and frustrated, but do not necessarily translate that anger and frustration into a clear analysis that, yes, now that means we need a new party for the 99%. We have to be honest in recognizing that many genuine activists will try the tactic of trying to take back the Democratic Party, following the lead of Bernie Sanders and our revolution. They will be doing that. I think our approach should be, the movement's approach should be to work together around concrete fighting demands to build the largest struggle on the streets while continuing to have an honest and open debate about strategy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chris talked about the times we live in. These are trying times. But in these trying times, I am given tremendous hope by the newfound spirit of rebellion amongst young people. Look at the Black Lives Matter movement. Look at the campus movement against sexual violence. Look at the environmental movement. We have these movements being led by young people, by millennials. And most significant in all of this is the growing support for socialism, with thousands of young people joining socialist organizations. And the reason why is no mystery. They recognize that capitalism has failed them. And Donald Trump is a particularly repulsive expression of the predatory nature of the capitalist system itself. We found out just this week that just 8 people, own more wealth than half of the world's population. That is, 3.5 billion people at the bottom have less than 8 multi-billionaires. We also found out, as Jill mentioned, that global temperatures for the 3rd year in a row have broken all previous records. Sisters and brothers, we need a radically different society.
Yes.
We need socialism. Socialism means a society where the major corporations are taken into public ownership so we can democratically plan how to use society's resources to meet human need rather than private profit. An egalitarian society rather than the dog-eat-dog bloody competition of capitalism. A society based on international cooperation rather than the vile nationalism that Trump is promoting. Sisters and brothers, another world is possible, but we will need to fight for it. I hope that we can all join in fighting for a socialist future, because there is absolutely no time to lose. Thank you.
Wow. I'm gonna let that sink in for a second. Thank you for both your analysis and for your work, and for the struggle that you are leading, and for being a shining light on that side of the coast, but for all of us everywhere. Thank you. I heard someone say that you might be the next senator from Washington State. Or governor.
Have you all heard of what's going on out there at Standing Rock? Not only is water sacred, but water is the foundation of all real economic value globally, across the globe. So to this day, there have been about 600 arrests in North Dakota of people who have made the decision to sacrifice their liberty, their lives even, and their limbs in pursuit of liberty, freedom, justice, and equality. Not only is that struggle about a people's right to clean water, but that struggle is about the very sanctity of the American Constitution, and whether or not we still have the right to speak freely, the right to peaceably assemble. Right now, the Army Corps of Engineers is trying to prescribe what they call free speech zones. That's right. Well, we've got news for them. The entire country is a free speech zone. Peace, when we're peaceful, it's not passive. The power of peace is not passive at all. The power of peace doesn't back down. But now, in the front line, in the face of all that violence, the power of peace tells us to stand in our own spiritual dignity and to not back down to the forces of oppression that have no spiritual, or legal authority to work over and against us. We know that our cause is righteous and that our cause is going to help liberate this entire country.
The moment we defy power, we are victorious. The moment we stand alongside the oppressed and accept being treated like the oppressed, we are victorious. The moment we hold up a flickering light in the darkness for others to see, we are victorious. The moment we thwart the building of a pipeline or a fracking site, we are victorious. And the moment those in power become frightened of us, we are victorious. I do not fight fascists because I will win. I fight fascists because they are fascists. Thank you.
Sisters and brothers, are you prepared? First, I want to thank you for your patience and for coming down to DC for a very, very important demonstration. And welcome to Inaugurate The Resistance. My name is L.J. Hawkins. I'm a member of Socialist Alternative, one of the co-sponsors of this event. And as you can see, we have a very distinguished group of thinkers, of activists, organizers on the stage. I'll just give a few opening remarks before we get to the meat of this event. As we prepare to go back home, we have to figure out a way, how do we organize and mobilize and agitate now that we will be leaving DC and beginning the Trump presidency. This struggle is not just about Donald Trump, but in fact, this is a struggle against the oligarchs of Wall Street and the system of capitalism and all that it breeds: racism, poverty, war, and environmental destruction. I'm reminded that this year is the 50th anniversary of Dr. King's Why I Oppose the Vietnam War. And in that speech, he did something that was very significant. He, in many ways, created a marriage between the civil rights movement and the anti-Vietnam War movement that was crucial in the defeat of U.S. imperialism in Vietnam and bringing home the troops and tying the struggle against war abroad and the war at home and the question of poverty and income inequality and civil rights. Today, we are faced now with a very grotesque version of neoliberal capitalism under Donald Trump. And I certainly won't be calling him president. I'll call him what his mama called him, Donald. How do we build our mass movements, and what do they look like? Today, you will hear folks that will give you prime examples of the work in Seattle of Kshama Sawant, the socialist city councilor. You will hear the analysis of Chris Hedges, raising the question and the specter of how dangerous this administration is and how do we engage in a fight back. The questions of, do we reform the Democratic Party, or do we begin a process of building our own political party of the working class and poor and the most oppressed? And ultimately, how do we build a resistance movement that at its core is rooted among the working class and the poor, not just in DC, but in every enclave of American society, in our cities, in our suburbs, in our urban centers, in our universities, in our workplace, among our unions and among our social justice and civic organizations, and even in our churches. And how do we build a bridge to those who voted for Trump, many of them the victims of neoliberal capitalism, who are itching for some change? We must create a wall of resistance and a powerful bridge where we can reach out our hands to them and say, our enemy is not the immigrant or the low-wage worker or the LGBTQAI person. Our enemy sits at one Wall Street. They're the ones who have the corporate lobbyists who bought off both political parties, Democrats and Republicans. The enemy is the one that's sending bombs to displace and dispossess working people in the poor of this planet. They're the ones that are fracking the land, and in many ways violating the land, sacred land. So today, I thank you for coming out. We will begin our program. Let's get ready. Let's prepare ourselves, because when we go back home, the real work begins.
My name is Darryl Moak, and I am one of the national co-chairs of the U.S. Green Party and also the chair of the D.C. Statehood Green Party. And so we are honored to be able to host you here in our great state of Douglas Commonwealth, also sometimes known as New Columbia. We are proud to have you here with us. We're proud to have you march with us. We are proud to stand with you and beside you as we continue to make sure that this nation that we live in and the world that we live in is exactly what we need and want it to be. And so we are glad to be a part of this with you, as is the U.S. Green Party, glad to be a part of this process and to work with you and to stand with you.